The perfect deception. A simple life, a hidden fortune. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Roosevelt Community Center, casting golden light across the art studio where Victoria Hayes stood before her students. Paint-stained apron tied around her waist, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked like any other art teacher struggling to make ends meet. Nobody in this room knew the truth. Nobody knew that the woman teaching underprivileged children how to mix colors was actually Victoria Elizabeth Hayes, sole heir to the Hayes industrial empire, worth over $3 billion. "Remember," Victoria said softly, guiding a young girl's brush across the canvas. "There are no mistakes in art, only happy accidents." The child's face lit up with joy, and Victoria felt that familiar warmth in her chest. This was why she did it. This was why she had walked away from the penthouse, the designer clothes, and the suffocating expectations of high society 5 years ago. Her father, Richard Hayes, had nearly disowned her when she announced her decision. "You want to throw away everything I built?" he had shouted. But Victoria was tired of being a trophy, tired of men who saw dollar signs instead of a person. So she had taken a modest trust fund, changed her lifestyle completely, and disappeared into the ordinary world. She rented a small apartment in Brooklyn, taught art classes, and finally felt like she could breathe. The man who changed everything. It was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon when Derek Sterling walked into her life. Victoria was cleaning up after class when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to find a man in his mid-30s, tall and handsome with dark hair slightly damp from the rain, holding a portfolio under his arm. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, his voice warm and genuine.
I'm Derek Sterling.
"I'm the architect working on the community center renovation project. I wanted to introduce myself and see how we can preserve your art space during construction." Victoria felt her guard go up instinctively. She had learned to be careful around attractive men with smooth words. But there was something different about Derek. He didn't stare at her with that calculating look she had seen so many times before. He seemed genuinely interested in protecting her student's space. "Victoria Hayes," she replied, shaking his hand. "I appreciate you thinking of us. Most people forget about the art program when renovations start." They talked for over an hour. Derek shared his vision for making the community center more accessible and beautiful. He spoke about architecture the way Victoria spoke about art, with passion and purpose. Before she left that evening, he had asked for her number, claiming he would need to consult with her about the renovation plans. But when he called 3 days later, it wasn't about construction permits or floor plans. "I know this might be forward," Derek said, his voice slightly nervous, "but would you like to have dinner with me? Somewhere that's not a construction site." Victoria surprised herself by saying yes. Building something beautiful. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in the neighborhood. No fancy wine lists, no pretentious waiters. Just good food and better conversation. Derek told her about growing up in Michigan, about his father who was a carpenter and taught him to love building things. He talked about his dreams of designing affordable housing that didn't look like affordable housing. Victoria found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in years. She told him about her passion for teaching, about her students who created beauty despite their difficult circumstances. She talked about her own childhood, carefully editing out the private jets and vacation homes, instead focusing on her mother who had died when she was 12 and how art had helped her process that grief. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," Derek said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "You care about things that matter." Over the following months, their relationship blossomed. Derek would bring coffee to her studio before work. They would spend weekends exploring Brooklyn, finding hidden gems in thrift stores and eating street food. He never pressured her to go to expensive restaurants or questioned why she lived in a modest apartment on a teacher's salary. He seemed to love her for exactly who she appeared to be. Victoria's best friend Chloe, one of the few people who knew her real identity, was skeptical. "He seems too perfect," Chloe warned during one of their coffee dates. "Have you done any background checks?" "That's paranoid," Victoria laughed. "Not everyone is after money, Chloe. Derek doesn't even know I have any." "That's exactly what worries me," Chloe replied. What happens when he finds out? But Victoria pushed those concerns aside. For the first time in her adult life, she was being loved for herself, not for her bank account or her last name. Felt too good to question. The proposal that changed everything. 6 months into their relationship, Derek proposed. It happened on a Sunday morning in Prospect Park. Nothing elaborate, no flash mob or helicopter. Just the two of them sitting on a bench watching joggers pass by, when Derek got down on one knee and pulled out a simple silver ring. Victoria, you've made me believe in happiness again, he said, his eyes shining with emotion. I don't have much to offer you except my heart and a promise that I'll spend every day trying to make you smile. Will you marry me? Victoria's heart soared. This was what she had always wanted. Someone who loved her, not her money. Someone who proposed with a ring he had clearly saved up for, not a diamond that cost more than most people's houses. Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They celebrated with champagne from the corner store and pizza on her apartment floor. Derek talked excitedly about their future. They would have a small wedding, maybe at the community center. They would save up for a modest house in the suburbs someday. They would build a life together based on love, not luxury. Victoria went to sleep that night feeling like the luckiest woman alive. She had escaped the golden cage of her inheritance and found real love. Or so she thought. The first crack in the perfect picture. The subtle changes started about 2 weeks after the proposal. Derek began asking casual questions about her family. You never talk about your parents, he mentioned one evening. Are you not close with them? My mother passed away when I was young, Victoria said carefully. My father and I are complicated. What does he do? Derek pressed gently. Business, Victoria replied vaguely. We don't really talk much. She noticed Derek's expression shift slightly, just for a moment, before his warm smile returned. That must be hard, he said, dropping the subject. But the questions continued. He wanted to know where she grew up, where she went to school, what her maiden name was before she started using her mother's maiden name Hayes. Each question seemed innocent on its own, but together they formed a pattern that made Victoria's instincts prickle with unease. Then came the moment that changed everything. Derek had moved some of his things into her apartment, and Victoria was putting away his clothes when she found a folder tucked into his briefcase. She wouldn't have looked except her name was written on the tab. Her real name, Victoria Elizabeth Hayes Rothschild. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were printed articles about her father's company, about her disappearance from high society 5 years ago, about the Hayes family fortune. There were notes in Derek's handwriting, calculations about trust funds and inheritance timelines. There was even a photocopy of a society magazine from 6 years ago with Victoria's picture at a charity gala, wearing a designer gown and diamonds. At the bottom of the folder was a document that made her blood run cold. It was a pre-drafted contract for a post-nuptial agreement, already filled out with her real financial information. Information he shouldn't have had access to. The devastating truth. Victoria sat on the floor of her apartment. The folder contents spread around her like damning evidence at a crime scene. Her mind raced through every moment of their relationship, re-examining each memory through this new, terrible lens. The way he had appeared at the community center so conveniently. The way he had pursued her so persistently. The two perfect stories about his humble background. Had any of it been real? Had he known who she was from the very beginning? Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Can't wait to see you tonight, my love. I have something important to discuss. About our future. Victoria's stomach turned. She knew what that discussion would be. He was going to reveal that he knew about her money. Maybe he would frame it as wanting honesty in their marriage. Maybe he would pretend to be hurt that she had hidden it from him. But the evidence in her hands told a different story. This had been his plan all along. She thought about confronting him immediately, throwing the folder in his face and demanding the truth. But something stopped her. If Derek had been calculating enough to orchestrate this entire relationship, then a simple confrontation wouldn't be enough. He would lie, manipulate, turn it around on her somehow. No, Victoria realized, her shock hardening into cold determination. If Derek had been playing a game, then it was time for her to play too. But she would play to win. She carefully returned the folder to exactly where she had found it, photographing every page first with her phone. Then she sat down and made a call she never thought she would make. "Chloe," she said when her friend answered, "you were right to be suspicious. I need your help. And I need the name of the best private investigator you know." The game begins. By the time Derek arrived that evening with Thai takeout and a bright smile, Victoria had composed herself. She smiled back, kissed him hello, and pretended that her world hadn't just shattered into a million pieces. "So what did you want to talk about?" she asked as they sat down to eat. Derek reached across the table and took her hand. "I've been thinking about our wedding," he said. "I know we talked about keeping it small and simple, but I want to give you something special. I've been saving up, and I thought maybe we could have a slightly bigger celebration. Invite more people. Maybe even look at a nicer venue." Victoria's mind worked quickly. He was escalating. Pushing for a bigger wedding meant more expenses, more opportunity to claim they needed financial help. It was a test to see if she would reveal her resources. "That's sweet, Derek," she said carefully. "But I'm happy with something simple. I don't need a big wedding to be happy." She saw the flicker of frustration in his eyes, quickly masked. "Of course," he said smoothly. "I just want you to have everything you deserve." "Everything I deserve," Victoria thought bitterly. "Or everything you think you deserve." They spent the evening watching a movie, Derek's arm around her shoulders, both of them pretending to be the perfect couple in love. But Victoria's mind was elsewhere, planning her next moves. She would need to be strategic, careful, and absolutely certain before she made her move. Because if Derek thought he could deceive her, manipulate her, and steal from her, he was about to learn a very expensive lesson. Victoria Hayes might have walked away from her fortune, but she was still her father's daughter. And nobody played games with a Hayes and won. A father's wisdom. The next morning, Victoria did something she hadn't done in months. She called her father. "Victoria." Richard Hayes's voice was surprised and cautious. "Is everything all right, Dad?" she said, her voice steady despite her churning emotions. "I need your help, and I need you to not say I told you so." There was a pause. Then her father's voice softened. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Victoria told him everything. About Derek, about the folder, about the realization that her entire relationship had been built on deception. As she spoke, she felt the weight of it all pressing down on her. She had been so desperate to escape the world of money and manipulation that she had run straight into the arms of someone who embodied exactly what she was trying to avoid. "First," her father said when she finished, "I love you and I'm proud of you for calling me. Second, we're going to handle this the right way. I'm sending someone to help you. His name is James Chun, and he's the best investigator in the business. He'll find out everything about this Derek Sterling." "Thank you, Dad," Victoria whispered. "And Victoria?" her father added, his voice hard. "When we're done, this man will regret the day he ever heard the name Hayes." As Victoria hung up, she felt a strange mixture of emotions. Grief for the relationship she thought she had. Anger at being deceived. But underneath it all, a cold determination. Derek had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated her. He thought she was just a naive art teacher who would be easy to manipulate. He had no idea he was hunting a lioness who was about to become the hunter. The game was on, and Victoria was going to make sure she won. He unraveling the truth. The investigator arrives. James Chun didn't look like Victoria expected. She had imagined a gruff, older man in a trench coat, like something from a detective movie. Instead, the man who arrived at her apartment 3 days later was in his early 40s, dressed in a casual blazer and jeans, with kind eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Hayes," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Your father has briefed me on the situation. Before we begin, I need you to understand something. What I find might hurt. It might change everything you thought you knew. Are you prepared for that?" Victoria thought about Derek's smile, The way he held her at night, the promises they had made. Then she thought about the folder hidden in his briefcase, the calculated deception. "I need to know the truth," she said firmly. "Whatever it is." James nodded approvingly and pulled out a tablet. "I've already started preliminary research. Derek Sterling is his real name, but that's about where the truth ends. He's not from Michigan. He grew up in Connecticut, in a wealthy family that lost everything in a bad investment scandal when he was 19. Victoria's heart sank. Even his origin story had been a lie. "His father wasn't a humble carpenter," James continued, swiping through documents. "His father was Marcus Sterling, a hedge fund manager who served 2 years in prison for fraud. Derek himself has a degree from Yale, not the state school he told you about. And here's where it gets interesting." James pulled up a series of photographs. Over the past 8 years, Derek has been involved with 4 different women. All of them wealthy. All of them ended up transferring significant sums of money to him before the relationships ended. Victoria felt sick. "He's done this before?" "Not just before," James said grimly. "He's perfected it. Look at the pattern. He targets women who are hiding their wealth or trying to live below their means. He researches them thoroughly, creates a persona that appeals specifically to them, and slowly manipulates them into giving him access to their money. A history of broken hearts." James spread out more files on Victoria's coffee table. Each one represented a woman Derek had targeted. Jennifer Martinez, a tech heiress who had moved to Oregon to escape Silicon Valley. Derek had posed as an environmental activist. She had given him $800,000 for a fake charity before discovering the truth. Amanda Winters, daughter of a pharmaceutical CEO, who wanted to be a veterinarian away from her family's empire. Derek had played the role of a struggling animal rescue founder. She had lost $1.2 million before her lawyers caught on. Rachel Kim, an heiress to a hotel chain who was working as a social worker. Derek had been a community organizer that time. She had transferred $600,000 before her brother hired an investigator. "And here's the most recent one," James said, pulling up a photo that made Victoria gasp. The woman looked eerily similar to Victoria herself. Same build, same dark hair, same gentle eyes. Sarah Morrison, daughter of a real estate mogul. She was teaching music at a community center in Boston when Derek found her 2 years ago. "What happened to her?" Victoria asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. James's expression darkened. "She fell hard. Really hard. Derek convinced her they needed money to start a nonprofit together. She gave him $2 million over the course of 18 months. When she finally discovered he was stealing from the nonprofit accounts, she confronted him. He disappeared overnight, taking everything with him. Sarah had a complete breakdown. She's still in therapy." Victoria felt tears burning her eyes, not just for herself, but for all these women who had dared to love someone, who had tried to escape the complications of wealth, only to be hunted for that very wealth they were trying to leave behind. "How did he find me?" she asked quietly. James pulled up a different set of documents. "That's what's interesting. Derek has a partner, a woman named Vanessa Lockhart. She's a researcher, very good at her job. She identifies targets by monitoring social media, charity boards, volunteer organizations, anywhere wealthy people might go when they want to live normal lives. She found you through the community center's website. You were mentioned in a local article about art programs for underprivileged kids. Vanessa connected that to old society photos, ran facial recognition, and figured out you were Richard Hayes's daughter. So this was all planned from the beginning?" Victoria's voice cracked. "I'm afraid so. Derek studied you for 2 months before engineering that first meeting. The community center renovation project? He wasn't the original architect. He convinced the actual architect to let him take over the community consultations. He created opportunities to meet you." Victoria felt the room spinning. Every moment she had treasured, every conversation she had thought was spontaneous, every touch she had believed was genuine, had all been scripted. She had been nothing but a mark, a target, a job. The current scheme revealed. "So what's his endgame with me?" Victoria asked, wiping her tears away. She needed to think clearly now. James swiped to a new screen. Based on his pattern and what we've uncovered so far, here's what I believe is happening. Derek knows about your main trust fund, the one you've been living on. That's roughly $5 million. But he's also discovered something else. James paused, meeting her eyes. Your father set up a marriage contingency fund. Did you know about that? Victoria's eyes widened. What? Your father established it years ago. If you marry, you gain access to an additional $50 million trust fund. It was his way of ensuring you'd be taken care of if you chose a partner. Derek found out about it somehow. How is that even possible? Those documents are confidential. James's expression was grim. That's what I'm still investigating. But I suspect Vanessa has connections inside financial institutions. She may have paid someone for information. Regardless, Derek knows. And that's what he's really after. Not your modest trust fund. The marriage fund. Victoria felt a cold fury building inside her. So he needs to marry me to get it. Exactly. And based on the timeline, I believe he's planning to push for a quick wedding. The pre-drafted post-nuptial agreement you found? That's his safety net. He'll convince you to sign it after the wedding, probably by claiming it's to protect you or by manufacturing some financial crisis. Then he'll drain the account and disappear. Victoria finished bitterly. That's the pattern. But Victoria, there's something else. James pulled up a final document. Derek is in debt. Serious debt. He owes money to some very dangerous people. Gambling debts, primarily. He needs the score and he needs it soon. That makes him desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Crafting the perfect trap. Victoria stood and walked to her window, looking out at the Brooklyn street below. Somewhere out there, Derek was probably planning his next move, confident in his deception. He had no idea that his entire scheme was unraveling. I want him to pay, Victoria said quietly. Not just lose the money. I want him to face consequences. Real consequences. For me. For Sarah. For all the women he's hurt. James nodded. Then we need to be smart about this. If we confront him now, he'll run. He's done it before. We need evidence that will hold up legally. We need to catch him in the act. How? James smiled, and for the first time, Victoria saw the predator beneath the professional exterior. We give him exactly what he wants. We make him think he's won. Over the next hour, James outlined a plan. Victoria would pretend to discover her father's marriage fund on her own. She would be excited, thinking it was a wonderful surprise. She would suggest using it to fund their wedding and their future. Derek would take the bait, push for a quick wedding, and present his post-nuptial agreement. But here's the key, James explained. We'll set up a dummy account that looks like the marriage fund. When Derek tries to access it, we'll have everything documented. His intent, his actions, all of it on record. Plus, I'll be gathering evidence of his previous cons. With testimony from his other victims, we can build a fraud case that will put him away. What if he doesn't take the bait? Victoria asked. He will. He's arrogant and he's desperate. That's a dangerous combination that leads to careless mistakes. Trust me.
Victoria nodded slowly.
The thought of continuing to pretend with Derek made her feel sick, but the thought of him doing this to another woman made her feel sicker. Okay, she said. Let's do it. Playing the perfect fiancé. That evening, when Derek came over with flowers and that charming smile, Victoria had to dig deep to find the performance she needed. She kissed him hello, told him about her day, and acted like nothing had changed. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. You seem distracted, Derek observed during dinner, his eyes studying her carefully. Victoria's heart raced. Had she given something away? She forced a laugh.
I'm sorry.
I've just been thinking about the wedding. I want it to be perfect, but I'm worried about the cost. I don't want to put pressure on either of us. She saw Derek's eyes light up, just for a moment. This was his opening. Don't worry about that, he said, reaching for her hand. We'll figure it out together. That's what marriage is, right? facing things as a team. I know, but I just wish I had more to contribute. My salary as a teacher isn't exactly lavish. Derek was quiet for a moment, and Victoria could almost see the wheels turning. Victoria, he said carefully, you know you can be honest with me about anything, right? About your family, your background, anything. Here it comes, Victoria thought. He's going to make his move. What do you mean? She asked innocently. I just mean that if your family has resources, or if there's anything you haven't told me, it's okay. I love you for you, not for what you have or don't have. Victoria wanted to laugh at the irony. Instead, she squeezed his hand. I appreciate that. Really. It's just, my relationship with my father is complicated. Even if he wanted to help, I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable accepting. She saw the frustration flicker across Derek's face again. He had expected her to open up, to reveal the money. But she wasn't making it easy. Good. Let him work for it. A calculated discovery. 2 days later, Victoria executed the next phase of the plan. She called Derek, her voice breathless with excitement. Derek, you won't believe what just happened. Can you come over? Now. When he arrived 20 minutes later, Victoria was sitting at her kitchen table with her laptop open and papers spread everywhere. She had staged it perfectly, making it look like she had accidentally stumbled onto something. What's going on? Derek asked, and Victoria could hear the anticipation in his voice. I was updating my bank information, and I found this account I didn't know existed, Victoria said, pointing at her screen. The dummy account that James had created looked completely legitimate, showing a balance of $50 million. I called my father's office, and apparently he set up a marriage trust fund for me years ago. I never knew about it. Derek, this changes everything. She watched Derek's face carefully. For just a moment his mask slipped. She saw the greed, the triumph, the excitement. Then he composed himself, but not before Victoria had seen the truth in his eyes. That's incredible, he said, pulling her into a hug. But Victoria, this doesn't change anything between us. I hope you know that. I know, Victoria said, pulling back to look at him. But it means we can have the wedding we want. We can start our life without financial stress. We could even fund that nonprofit you've always talked about. The one that helps communities through architecture and design. She had made that up on the spot, testing him. Derek's eyes widened slightly. You remembered that? Of course. It's your dream. It wasn't his dream at all. It was probably just another lie he had told in passing. But watch him run with it now. Victoria, we should probably be careful with this money, Derek said, his voice taking on a serious tone. Maybe set up some proper financial structures. I have a friend who's a financial advisor. He could help us set up trusts, protections, make sure everything is secure. That sounds smart, Victoria agreed, though she knew his friend was probably just another person in on the con. But let's talk about the wedding first. I want to celebrate us. The web titans. Over the next week, Derek's behavior changed dramatically. Suddenly, he was pushing hard for a quick wedding. Why wait? He argued. We love each other. Let's just do it. Small ceremony. Just us and a few close friends. He also became more possessive, calling and texting constantly, always wanting to know where she was. James warned her this was typical. He's worried about losing control of the situation. He wants to lock this down before something goes wrong. Meanwhile, James was working behind the scenes. He had contacted Sarah Morrison, Derek's previous victim, and she had agreed to testify. He was building a case file that included financial records, testimony from victims, and evidence of Derek and Vanessa's research operation. We're close, James told Victoria during one of their secret meetings at a coffee shop across town. But we need Derek to make his move. We need him to actually attempt to access the money. How much longer do I have to keep this up? Victoria asked, exhausted from the constant performance. Soon. But there's something else you need to know. James pulled out his phone and showed her a series of text messages. We've been monitoring Derek's communications. He's been talking to Vanessa about moving the timeline up. He's more desperate than we thought. The people he owes money to are putting pressure on him. Victoria felt a chill. Is he dangerous? I don't think he'd hurt you physically, James said carefully. But he might try something drastic if he feels cornered. That's why we have surveillance on you at all times. You're safe. Victoria nodded, but she didn't feel safe. She felt like she was walking a tightrope, and any mistake could send everything crashing down. The proposal within a proposal. That night, Derek came to her apartment with champagne and an excited energy that set Victoria's nerves on edge. I have something to show you, he said, pulling out a folder. For a horrible moment, Victoria thought he was going to present the post-nuptial agreement already. But instead, he spread out wedding venue options. I've been thinking about what you said, about having the wedding we want. I found this perfect venue. It's available next month. Next month? Victoria said, genuinely surprised. That's so soon. I know, but why wait? We love each other. We know what we want. And with the trust fund, we can afford to make it special. He pulled her close. I just want to start our life together, Victoria. Is that so wrong? No, Victoria said softly. It's not wrong. But everything else about you is, she thought. There's just one thing, Derek said, his tone becoming more serious. With this kind of money involved, we should probably have some legal protections in place. Not because I don't trust you, but because we need to protect both of us. My friend, the financial advisor I mentioned, he suggested a post-nuptial agreement. What's that? Victoria asked, playing naive. It's just a document that outlines how assets are managed during marriage. It protects both of us, makes sure everything is clear and fair. Okay, Victoria said slowly. If you think it's important. She saw relief flood Derek's face. I'll have the documents drawn up. We can sign them right after the wedding. It's just a formality. Just a formality that will give you access to $50 million, Victoria thought bitterly. After Derek left that night, Victoria called James. He took the bait. He's pushing for a wedding next month, and he mentioned the postnup. Perfect, James said. Now we wait for him to make his move. And Victoria, we're going to get him. I promise. Victoria hung up and looked around her apartment, this small space that had been her refuge from her complicated life. Derek had invaded it, contaminated it with his lies. But soon, very soon, he would pay for what he had done. An unexpected ally emerges. 3 days before the scheduled wedding, Victoria received an unexpected visitor. She opened her door to find a woman in her 30s, with red-rimmed eyes and a determined expression. Are you Victoria Hayes? The woman asked. Yes. Who are you? My name is Sarah Morrison. I think we need to talk about Derek Sterling. Victoria's heart raced. Sarah was supposed to be in Boston working with James remotely. How did you find me? I'm sorry for showing up like this, Sarah said, her voice shaking. But when I heard you were going to marry him, I had to come. I had to warn you in person. Please, can I come in? Victoria let her in, her mind racing. Had Derek seen Sarah? Did he know his previous victim was here? Sarah sat on Victoria's couch and began to cry. I know you probably already know about me. The investigator, James, he contacted me. But I needed to tell you myself what Derek did to me. What he'll do to you if you let him. I know, Victoria said gently, sitting beside her. I know about all of it. Then why are you still going through with the wedding? Sarah asked desperately. Victoria looked at this woman, another victim of Derek's cruel scheme, and made a decision. Because I'm going to make sure he never does this to anyone else again. We're setting a trap. And I need you to be part of it. Sarah's tears stopped. She looked at Victoria with something like hope in her eyes. What do you need me to do? The final pieces fall into place. Victoria and James met with Sarah that evening, bringing her fully into the plan. Sarah had evidence that James hadn't known about, including emails where Derek had posed as a charity organization to get her money. She also had recordings of their conversations, where Derek had made promises he never intended to keep. This is gold, James said, reviewing Sarah's evidence. With this, We have enough to charge him with wire fraud, identity theft, and financial elder abuse from the Jennifer Martinez case. What do you need from me? Sarah asked.